І я, власне, зараз хотіла би передати
And
слово нашій наступній
now I would like
Hasydzhak.
to give the floor to Lesya Hasydzhak.
Голодомору. І ось цей перехід про, власне,
And what Mr. Anatoly said about Russian war
який
in Ukraine,
багато суголосних
a lot of
які нас
problems and questions appeared consequently, and we must thoroughly look through the studies of Holodomor and Holocaust in Ukraine. I know, and I'm sure that you also know this, dear colleagues. The Museum of Holodomor presents a lot of exhibitions, and they present parallels between 1930s and nowadays events.
Тому прошу пані
That's why I would like to give the floor to Madam Lesya, and I will kindly ask her to tell us about the agenda of the Museum of Holodomor. I suppose that my speech will be in dialogue with what Mr. Vitaly said.
Почати розмову про
National Museum of Holodomor-Genocide. What makes a museum? This is a collection that is exhibited and studied.
якщо виходити з
Considering this criterion, Museum of Holodomor exists as a legal entity, as a museum entity with collection, and not only about artifacts and attributes.
але якщо говорити
But speaking of criteria of evaluation of citizens and visitors,
в невеликому
yes, museum exists in small premises that was initially built as a commemoration space
того ж
in order to give the visitors an opportunity to enter the room from the street, to be emotional ready, to go deep into difficult story, and then they go to the museum space to find out the mechanism of genocide preconditions, how the evil was defeated and the good side won, and how we live with the consequences. But probably everybody knows
була побудована
that the first stage was launched in 2009
як ну так воно є.
as a political project of President Viktor Yushchenko, and we're sincerely grateful for his initiative, because without him this hall of memory won't be existing. And this was the history of the launch of the Museum of Holodomor, what we call a second stage, a building with the main exhibition,
Власне від
with the answers to the questions.
або не або, а точніше правильно сказати,
With the answers and with the facts that will they will bring the seed of the vision in the hearts of visitors.
у
In 2017, the state of Ukraine renovated the second stage,
ковіду насправді.
but then COVID started.
Це з будівництва.
There were some works,
Як ми знаємо, кошти були
but the funds were addressed to different anti-COVID measures, and then 2022 full-scale invasion.
попри це, завдяки
But still, thanks to prepayments before the full-scale invasion, the building is ready for 75%.
але всі думаю, що знають.
But
Я назву це
we have public discussion, but actually it wasn't a public discussion. This was a scenario written in Russia as a reaction to the law of Ukraine for providing costs for funding the Museum of Holodomor, and it resulted into the fact that the president announced a veto and the funds were not sent. And it was a public opinion that a country in the condition of war should pay for drones, not for the building of the museum. And Museum of Holodomor is not a simple museum. It's a museum that is telling a story of genocide in order to enslave young, ambitious country, young country that found recognition among other countries. It was a tool to bring it back to Russian Empire, but just called Soviet Empire. And now Putin's empire is doing actually the same thing, the genocide and war, in order not to allow the state of Ukraine to exist independently. I think these arguments are enough fulfilling to build a museum. And it could be a great deed of Ukrainians if we could, in the years of war, finish this museum, because it's really topical. But it didn't happen. Now there are no construction works. Of course, we as the museum workers, we work, we have exhibition. Also scientific concept exists, and we know how the new exposition will look like, but we can't talk about the terms because in the budget for 2025 we don't have funds to finish. But we still continue working in this realia. The Hall of Memory is used as an exhibition space, the space for discussions related not only to Holodomor, but also to other genocides made by Russia against other nations. That I just try to be brief. Our main work looks like the work of any other museum, but what I would like to underline, what Mr. Boris said, it's about oral history and testaments. For us, we need a lot of efforts to collect these oral testaments of those people who survived in Holodomor. Our collection has 5,000 testaments, but we don't stop. We try to find other micro collections in order to bring them to the general collection, to create a united, one entire Ukrainian collection of Holodomor testaments. Our problems and challenges, let me say, people don't trust Ukrainian museums. We had a history when the citizen of the United States of America, American Ukrainian, he said that he had a lot of testaments on paper, but I don't trust Ukraine and I don't want to send them to you. And it's not only about the war, because in the war everything can be destroyed immediately, but it's also about the trust to the institution.
Another issue is that, like, during several last years, we applying to different international organization of Ukrainians, and we're asking for money. And we're not asking for money because money is not the thing that we need firsthand, but we apply to the diaspora the materials, the data, the content, because we understand that it's already the third generation of people who survived Holodomor and escaped Soviet Union to US or Canada. We want some artifacts from them that would tell about the first commemoration practices that has started to be held abroad. We have to understand that it was abroad in Ukrainian diaspora communities, because US, Canada, Australia were the countries where the memory preserved, and the commemorational events were held annually. And during last 3 years, we didn't get any information from them. They want to support us, but like somehow we don't have any real support. And we also understand the older generation is already out of this question. It's like this question is not that relevant for them. The younger generation have other more important issues of supporting Ukraine and the Ukrainian army in their fight against Russia. And our question is sort of put in aside. And unfortunately, we can lose all of this part of the knowledge that is preserved abroad and the part of memory. Simultaneously, we held some exhibitions, and what I was surprised the thing that I was surprised during last year, we've heard from our journalists that Japan is a country of the centenarians, but recently our team has gathered the stories from men and women in Ukraine who were older than 100 years old. Our oldest respondent was 106 years old, and she had such a clear mind. She said, I love to read books, and you know, she lives in this very poor village. So we funded we gathered different books and sent to her. And I'm sure that Ukraine is a country of centenarians too. And if not only we had such neighbors like Russia, and if not for them, we would live like 150 years in love and peace. And the second issue that I would like to discuss is, again, this war, informational war with Russia, because before that time, Russia, starting from 1980s, the memory of Holodomor to the 90s was like a very acute topic in our national memory. First meetings, first gathering that were held by students and older people who are called now dissidents, by those people who were opposing this system, the Soviet system. So the first meetings were held because of the need of the discovery of the Soviet crimes against our countries, Soviet atrocities against our country, our nationals. And until today, Russia uses different methods to counteract Ukrainian science, Ukrainian museum activities, and Ukraine in promoting this memory of Holodomor. We can see it on the examples when we see on the occupied territories the memorials dedicated to Holodomor are removed. Moreover, they do it like in public. It's like a public action of removing those monuments that include propagandists. And we also know, living here in Ukraine in its present context, about the situation in Pokrovsk, and now we are putting lots of efforts to moved to our museum the memorial from the Pokrovsk cemetery that was established by Yushchenko president that was devoted to 80 years memorial of Holodomor. And it's very difficult because now cemetery is in the front line, and we need just like several moments to take this memorial and take it out, and it's really dangerous. And this memorial is very important, but also recently we understand that there are a lot of heroes buried on this cemetery, and this is a very acute question too. And by the testimonies of our military who are there, and they're even in the worst position there, so it's very difficult to exhumate them, to just move them on our territory, and it's impossible now, unfortunately. The time you have to wrap up, please, because you're reaching your time limit. So the challenges we face are acute. It's hard to talk about them. We all know about Gary Jones, the person who was telling to the whole world about Stalin atrocities in Ukraine. He has still some nephews, and the one who was promoting the memory of Gary Jones, and another nephew is Philip. His name is Philip, and he is pro-Russian. He has like pro-Russian liberal position. I was mailing him, and he was saying that we are using the memory of Gary Jones as we want, as we see, as we want, and that we interpret the memory of Gary Jones in our way for our profit. And he said that he would be against that because he was against any wars. Another challenge that I want to say is that our exhibition that was devoted to the comparison of the modern war and Holodomor was cancelled because they said it was like a political exhibition, and it has a dual perception, and that we used some data from Levada Center, from the Russian Social Center, and this is misinformation. And then we understand that the person who wanted to cancel our exhibition was the person who was given 600 interviews to pro-Russian outlets. So they are like basically agents of Kremlin, and those people are trying to pollute our informational environment and are trying to disturb our work. Another challenge is the vocabulary, the terminology in our museum, in history terminology. So it's like the meaning of Holodomor. Holodomor is the name to the Holocaust, to the genocide that happened in 1930s. The events that were held in 1921, 1946 were forced famine. We did not yet prove that it was a genocide, and we need some more time for the investigations, but we have to name things by their own names, as we know that the Holocaust is a name for the Holocaust, for the genocide of Jews. And when we are talking about Holodomor in plural, when I hear this from our historians, I'm a little bit disappointed, because but what we need to do is to make some changes in our legislation, and it should be signed by our president to establish a right terminology. And the last challenge that I would like to mention is that the idea that we have commemorate the people deceased during the Holodomor. It's about the people. The Holodomor is the story of Holodomor is a story of Ukrainian heroic society, because if people will not survive, the nation would not be reborn, and we would not sit here today. And we gather all those stories from the survivals, and of course we have a question that we have some people that could be compared to the writers among the nations, and to celebrate those people too, because some cases those people were like the heads of kolkhozes, some government workers or like local council workers or workers from school who just changed their position, and so at first they were persecutors and they became savers. And this question is very open too, and I think we have to work on this topic, and we have to work together on understanding this topic, because we started to work on it later, much later than our colleagues who are working with Holocaust. But I think that we will make this work and it will happen.